Oh, thank you.
Welcome to another episode of the Three Consulting Amigos. I'm Ray Anderson, and I'm here with Ron Burgess and Ed Lasak. And today, Ed's going to walk us through the 8 drivers very quickly, and then he's going to focus on how you can forecast and reevaluate where you are strategically and everything else in the business on a quarterly basis. So having said that, I'm going to pass the baton over to Ed and let him get started.
Thanks a lot, Ray. I appreciate that. I'd like to talk a little bit about the 8 drivers and then focus on the eighth driver, which is called forecast and reevaluate quarterly. But bottom line to these 8 drivers is the opportunity to optimize the value of your business. It looks at it from a marketing standpoint and surrounds all the potential opportunities to make your business more valuable. And it starts off with the first two. The first one is market potential, making sure that you're realizing your market potential, finding cracks in the market. Then we get into customer value, the stickiness of your customers. The stickier they are, the more value your business is worth. And that the ultimate there is having contracts for each one of these customers. We talk about the third driver, which is growing revenue and margin. And if you're selling your business, there's probably nothing more important than that. We talk about the fourth driver, which is increased efficiency and productivity, which is extremely valuable because every dollar you can carve out of your operation goes right to the bottom line, which is extremely important. We talked about driver number 5 being investing in high optimal ROI projects that are going to increase the value of your business. We talk about driver 6, which is optimize the balance sheet and cash flow. And this is an area that is typically not reviewed, and there's tons of opportunities to make your business more profitable and worth more. And then driver number 7 is M&A and partnership opportunities and how that could impact your business. And the one, number 8, is the one we're going to talk about today, and that is to forecast and reevaluate the operation on a quarterly basis. So I'm going to start about that because I think number 8 is maybe the most important because it's the glue that keeps everything together. And it also is the opportunity to keep everybody on the same page. And you have to do it on a quarterly basis. Otherwise, what ends up happening is nothing gets done. And on a quarterly basis, this gives you an opportunity to review all important financial and marketing information to make sure that the business is on track to meet its 3 to 5 year strategic plan. And so that's really, really important. And you do it by quarter, and every quarter you update your numbers, your financial numbers, so you know how the valuation of the company is improving. And you also work hard on trying to get the owner out of the day-to-day operation of the business. So every quarter, I would recommend that you set up a meeting with your board, your management, and outside consultants. I think outside consultants are great because they don't have a dog in the race, and they can give you some really good insights on whether you're making progress or not, and where you do need to beef up your operation to make more progress. And I like the idea, you schedule it on a quarterly basis, you have everybody show up, but you start with a meeting with the owner and the board, and you review the exit strategy that's on the table. And does that exit strategy still apply? And if it does, you keep moving forward. If it's changed, instead of selling it to your sons or your daughters that are coming up, the next generation, you want to sell to an outside. Obviously, it changes everything in the way you develop value and market the business for your exit. So that's the start. And then you go through the normal financial information. And the first thing always is the income statement. And that's where most companies focus on when they're reviewing their results. So for the last quarter, you look at the income statement and the cash flow, and did we make our forecast? Did we meet what we thought we were going to meet? And are we making progress? What areas? I like to do an income statement by department so that you can kind of determine which departments are doing well and which ones aren't. And the ones that aren't need to have some type of a plan in place to get back on target. And so that's really important. And the ones that are blowing it out and doing a great job, they need to be rewarded. So I think a good review of the financial performance on a quarterly basis is extremely important. I'm going to leave it up to Ray and Ron now to provide some comments on it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this is a good start, Ed, but would you do me a favor, pull up your screen a little bit? We can't see your chin.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
That's all right. There you go. Much better. Thank you. Yeah, I think one of the things that may be of some help here, the companies that we're working with, are they going to feel comfortable with being able to review an income statement and cash flow? And how would you help them if in fact they needed some help in that area?
Well, it all comes down to how it's prepared, Ray, and it's got to be prepared by a level of accountability so you can determine whether you're making progress or not. And I think overall, everywhere I've ever been, I think people do a relatively pretty good job on reviewing their income statement. So I just think there needs to be more accountability by the folks that have the greatest impact on that line item, and are they making progress or not?
And to your point here, it means bringing in the key people who are actually in a position to make that happen. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, I really believe that you got to have full transparency, candid conversations with the people, with the management running the show, and the board that are setting the expectations. We all have to be on the same page, and reviewing the income statement and determining whether we're making any progress really helps put everybody on the same page. It becomes really obvious where your problems and challenges are by this type of review.
Right.
Ray, I hear, kind of going back to your first comment, I kind of hear another question there, and that is, can you get people to do it? And I think that the answer is sometimes you can't get people to do it. When you come in from the outside like we have for decades, sometimes they're not comfortable with you, and it takes a long time to build a relationship so that they can trust your judgment and so forth. I think that what this represents is not really how can we get somebody to do something, but really it's the driver number 8 basically says, this is how you drive all 8 drivers forward. And so if you choose not to do it, instead of will they meet with us, if you choose not to do it, likely you're not going to be able to get the job done. So sure, you don't have to, but why did you go through the 7 drivers if you're not going to execute it? Right. So I would use that argument, and that is that the way you tie this whole thing up and put a bow on it is to make sure that they understand up front that these things don't happen very easily if you don't have an organized way to communicate and motivate and measure your people. And that's what these first 3 bullet points really are about.
I would agree with that, Ron, and I would also say that some organizations don't feel comfortable bringing everybody together. Yeah. And by not bringing everybody together, they're missing out, in my opinion, on the greatest opportunity of all. Because management typically will bust their ass to get things done right if they know what's expected out of them.
Yeah.
And they're giving the authority to do their jobs properly and with the support of the board.
Yeah. Now I have met over the years with the owners at this level. It wasn't necessarily a board meeting, but sort of an advisory board kind of level. Typically that can work very well as long as the appropriate information is passed on to the appropriate people in another meeting. So a lot of times we'll go through these things, come up with a few recommendations, and then it's up to the owner to be able to disseminate that and get their people to perform. If their people don't perform, that ends up showing up on the reports. They may be these reports, or there may be other management reports. Then the pressure is put on the owners. Why can't you get your people to get this done? Is there a leadership issue here?
Right.
Accountability, where is this falling apart? There are times that, outside people need to meet and need to teach owners how to meet with their management system and their management team. And so in a case like that, you can prepare information that is department oriented so that people can just see the numbers that have to do with them without, say, giving away profit information. I've been in situations in the past where companies are doing so poorly that they felt like they would scare the heck out of their employees, and all of their best employees would leave if they saw the real numbers. And so they don't really want to share those numbers until they can get back to health. It's true that the employees can help get them back to health if you'll share some of those things. But I do think that the level of the kinds of people that you have, whether you're manufacturing versus, say, an accountancy or a law firm, that has a lot to do with what you share in these meetings. And so you have to just think it through carefully. And you can always start with a little less information and then add more information as the owners are more comfortable with that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the things that I would say to add to this in terms of how you engage your people, regardless of the level, is the more information you give them, but you give them in ways that the competitors can't use it. It can be constructed in such a way, it's a scoreboard that everybody can see, they feel comfortable with. And my experience is like any human being, when you give them a focus and a goal, they're excited about that. And, one of my stories, Ron, in terms of when a company's doing badly is what happened on Nokia, because I had a chance to work with the senior VP of Nokia in the early 2000s. And when they were struggling and they were about to go bankrupt, the new CEO simply came in and he talked to everybody. He said, look, I'm going to give you access to information that you can use one of two ways. You can either help us move forward or you're going to cause us to be bankrupt. But we're so close right now, it's just, I'm going to have to trust you. And literally, they took that to heart and turned around the company. And so I think some of this is an issue of trust. And what I see Ed trying to do here, as we've gone through these 8 steps, if we've effectively engaged people, they use this as an opportunity, and it makes them feel empowered and engaged and feel like they're a part of something important.
While I said that most companies do a pretty good job of reviewing their income statement and cash flows, I think most companies don't do a very good job when it comes to reviewing the balance sheets. And with a balance sheet, what you're trying to do is you're trying to optimize the value of your assets that you have and minimize the risk of the operation, which provides tremendous benefits to the operation if done correctly. So I would recommend to any small business that they open up the balance sheet and review it with their management team and board to make sure everybody understands. And because a lot of times we have a lot more working capital than is necessary that could be used for something more productively and possibly reduce debt. Or some companies may have no debt and they should have some debt because they're borrowing that money at 5%, say, and they could be making 20 to 25% rate of return. That doesn't make a lot of sense to be totally debt-free. So without looking at the balance sheet, you can't make a proper assessment of the company.
I agree. Yeah.
The next step is review progress and accountability of action plans to achieve strategic plan. And we all know that part of the strategic plan process is we figure out what we want to do to become more effective and more valuable. And we come up with ways of making the company more profitable and a better use of its balance sheet. And by setting up these progress teams and holding them accountable and reviewing their results, you make up the difference between where you'd be going with your income statement and valuation versus where you could be going with your income statement and valuation. And it's extremely important. It brings everybody together to solve problems, because a lot of these action plans require the coordination of work between several departments, not just one. So therefore, it forces departments to work together.
Yeah, if I can make an observation there, I think, and you've seen this, Ed, and I know you have too, Ron. You know, sadly, you tend to get into these little fiefdoms and also silos in which, you know, one department really doesn't communicate with another department. So as a consequence, sometimes, you know, the simplest things can be missed because somebody didn't bother to connect with somebody who's sending them a product they need to work on, or they're giving a product to another customer downline. And this, when you have these meetings on a quarterly basis, if all those people are there, it reinforces that need to be able to work interdependently.
Ray, I can remember some of our assignments that we worked on when people would go into this room and share what they did for the last 3 months. A lot of people were embarrassed because they didn't do anything. And it became very noticeable to the rest of the team that they weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. So what did it do? It gave them a kick in the behind to get moving.
Right.
So
right.
the next time we met with them, they were on target and they were ready to move forward. And it takes these meetings to let people know that we're serious about this.
Right.
We're expecting results, improvements. And if they don't come in like we forecast them, we want to know why. And probably more important, what are we going to do to get back on target?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of an appendix to my previous comment, and that is that, you know, if you can have meetings like that where people can see that the plan is being executed. It doesn't have to be the financials, but certainly everybody who's responsible for some of the pieces of these drivers that we've been talking about. If you can get together at least to review the progress and accountability, then that really does provide a little incentive. It doesn't take very long, 2 or 3 meetings, before somebody feels completely out of step if they can't keep up and they can't report the progress. And the truth of the matter is that while some business owners can be very tough and maybe too much so, in my experience, that's generally not what happens. Generally, owners are too soft. They don't really understand how to motivate their people. They might be, you know, great leaders, and they might create a fun place to work, etc. Then behind closed doors, they say, "Gee, I can't get Billy over there to do anything." And so it's like, well, you know, how have you tried to motivate him, and have you given him the proper goals, and have you watched his progress, and have you measured those goals? And it's like, oh, gee, I just find that hard. Well, that's why some independent businesses don't perform as well as others, is because you don't have expectations that you have to get better all the time.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's really important to update a rolling forward 3-year financial projections of the business by area of accountability, because there's nowhere to hide then. Management can't come up with a general explanation that doesn't make any sense, because we got the numbers in front of us. And I think a lot of times they don't review the balance sheet, but they also don't update the numbers, or not capable of forecasting the numbers 3 years out into the future. And if you don't do that, you really never know whether you're going to make your desired expectation or not.
Right. That's absolutely right. And it drives innovation, and it drives planning and capital investment, because too many small businesses kind of wait until they wait until they've got an issue right on top of them, and then they say, well, we have to buy a machine, or well, and the truth of the matter is that those are decisions that need to be made well in advance, so that you can look around and get the right deal. So that if I have a client that planned to change their bottling equipment, and fortunately they planned it last year, literally. They made the order in December. It was supposed to happen in March, and guess what happened with COVID? Well, they're just now working on their bottling plant, and because the people can't come out and work, they're having to do everything by they're using their own mechanics. They've actually hired their own mechanics to be able to help do welding and to put this machinery, it's big, expensive machinery to put this whole thing together. And so they're using Zoom in order to do it. Well, that's taken a lot of extra time and effort. And, had they not planned way ahead, they would have really been behind the 8 ball. Fortunately, the wheels didn't fall off of everything, but the only reason that they did it is because we had a 5-year plan that showed that if we didn't make the adjustments many years before we got there, we wouldn't be profitable in 5 years. That's the only reason that investment was made.
That's why it's important to do the numbers, so you can measure results as you go through the journey. The other area that is very seldom discussed in a quarterly review is the marketing plan. And I can't think of anything more important than the marketing plan. And a lot of times these quarterly meetings are led by financial people, and they don't have the expertise to really do justice to a marketing plan. So I'm going to throw this one over to you, Ron, because this is your world. And I can only tell you this, from a financial perspective, you've really got to understand the marketing plan, the stickiness of your customers, and whether you're meeting the expectations of your customers.
Yeah, sure. Well, the first issue is that you have to have a marketing plan to review. And so many companies don't have a marketing plan. In 95, maybe 97% of the cases over the last 30 years of doing this, I would say they didn't have a marketing plan. I had written the first marketing plan that they ever had. And so if you don't know where you're going, as they say, any road will get you there. And that's kind of what happens. So if you have a marketing plan that's not going anywhere, then you're probably not going to get where you want to go. So you have to know where you want to go in order to be able to put together the plan. It's a strategic instrument. It's not a list of the radio stations you're going to advertise on. It can include that, but that's the detail part. It has to be strategic in the sense that you have to ask these tough questions about, are we serving our customers in the way that we intend to? Do they think of us the way we think of ourselves? In other words, properly positioning the company within the marketplace. It is more akin to an economic study than it is what some people would think like an advertising plan, because advertising is just one small piece of marketing. So yes, you have to have a robust marketing plan. You should have a robust marketing plan if you're going to maximize your growth, and you're going to be able to attract the kinds of customers that will give you the margins that you need. So very, very seldom do businesses look at the potential margin of a customer before they begin prospecting. Typically what they do is they just try to bring people in, and then without understanding where the most profitable business may actually be. So all of this has to tie together pretty carefully with the financial side of things, because if you don't know the numbers, from the financial plan, the financials, and you also haven't done any other management reports on, say, customers, customer profiles, et cetera. How are you going to build a strategic plan? So it really takes understanding both the financials and marketing in order to put together a good plan. That is one reason why so few good marketing plans are written by independent business people. Now, contrast that with the Fortune 1000 companies. They all have very, very sophisticated marketing plans. They know exactly what they're doing, how they're going to do it. It doesn't always work, but they're going to give it a try. And so as a result, they seem to grow. And small businesses many times don't, and they're just left to try and survive. That's probably the biggest single reason long term that small businesses go out of business, because they don't really know where their customers are and how are they going to find them. So yes, that's a key piece of growing in any way. Yeah.
If I can add to that, Ed, the thing that you've said here is that, most of the clients that I've had the privilege of working with have pieces of these 8, a little bit here, a little bit there, but they've never integrated them. And I think that's what we're trying to help them do here in this quarterly review, is a chance to look at all the elements and decide, which ones need to be really closely monitored or adjusted because something's happened.
Very good. That's an excellent point, and it leads right into the next question. It's the $1 million question that very few business owners can answer, and that is, what is their business worth? And to figure that out, you have to look at not what you've done over the last 5 years. You need to project what you're going to be doing over the next 5 years. You can use the last 5 years to add credibility to your projection, but it's based upon the future. So that's why it's really important every year or every other year to do evaluation of your value. Because if the better you operate your company, you're not only going to make more money, but you're going to change the multiple in which your company will be sold. So I would challenge any business owner out there, if you don't know the value of your business, or if you don't have a very clear idea of what it could be, you're probably missing out on lots of opportunities. And again, it's all based upon expected future cash flows. That's why people are willing to invest in your business. And that's really, really, really important in determining that, which means it kind of gets into the next area, and that is those cash flows have to be generated by the company, not by the owner. So having a plan in place where the business is going to continue to operate and generate results without the owner's daily involvement, it is critical for selling a business and optimizing the value of the business. So in this quarterly review, several hours will be spent talking about the succession plan. How do you get the owner out of the day-to-day operation of the business? Who's going to assume those roles? Which department heads are doing a good job and which ones aren't? Which ones have the ability to take on more responsibility? Which ones do you have to have a special incentive plan for so they don't leave the company? A lot of companies, the value is with a couple key employees, not the owner. If someone poaches those employees and puts them in their company, it would have a devastating impact on the results of that company. So to me, that succession plan, again, is probably something that most businesses don't have, and they should.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know about Ron's experience, but, in all the companies I've worked in, only a select few that were large enough to have more than one branch and had what I would define as a successful succession plan. You know, most of them is just like, well, if somebody goes, we'll fill in the gap when they're gone. And it's not that the company can't survive, but the truth is, it's the reason where it is, and it's not growing.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same place. I would say that fewer people have succession plans than have marketing plans.
Yeah.
I think that's true.
So, and so if 97% don't have marketing plans, then 98% don't have succession plans. So I've had the occasion to participate in and see through just one successful succession plan, and so that's about 1%. And I've also participated in 3 or 4 others, none of which were successful. And the reason is that the owners couldn't agree on something, or they just didn't see that it was important to be spending the time and effort that it takes to be able to do it, and they saw it as not very valuable time spent, especially if we're sending bills to them, and they look at that and they say, gee, we're not getting anything done. And we're kind of going, yeah, you're not getting anything done because you can't agree on anything. So that's part of the problem you run into. In at least one case, the company where we tried to work, there were a group of 3 of us, and we tried to work through a succession plan so that they would be able to not participate in the business as much and increase the value and so forth. And that failed. But then when they tried to sell their business, they ran into the problem of nobody wants to buy it because there were two owners who did all the work. Now, this is a company of 60 or 70 people doing $15 million. It was in a small company. And yet the 2 owners loved working in it, and they liked what they did. They were craftsmen. They were not business people.
Yeah.
They loved doing what they were doing, and they were very happy working with customers and communicating, what needed to be done. But in terms of trying to hire a general manager, put in supervisors, they just didn't want to do it and thought it was all a waste of time. Well, when they finally decided to sell, it took over 5 years. And ultimately what they did to try and increase the value is they fired all of the consultants. They cut people. They did as much as they could just to simply reduce their expenses so that they could make it look like they're making more money than they actually were. They did sell it, right, but they sold it with strings. And so it wasn't the kind of outcome that the first one that I mentioned was, where we did have a good succession plan and we did have a successful sale and everybody's making lots of money.
Right. If I can cite an example from my experience, I was working with a company that owned the auto car franchise, and all the dump trucks, 90% of all the dump trucks in Southern California have an auto car chassis and then a dump truck on top of it. And the guys were interested in selling it, and I had a customer or a client who was willing to buy it. And so when they were in the midst of the negotiations, the 2 guys who owned the franchise said, well, we want a 50-50 split. And the guy who was going to buy the business said, look, he says, I've been watching you guys for 3 years. Not that I don't like you, but I will not relinquish control of the company unless I have control of the management. So unless I get 51%, there is no deal. And that was the end of it. But all for the things you're talking about, both of you here, without the right people in place, he wasn't willing to make that kind of an investment. And rightfully, most of the people we're talking about, and we're trying to set these companies up for success, if they do all these things, they will find the buyer who says, yes, I want this company.
Yeah, so
that's exactly right. This really is a formula to be able to emulate large companies in the way that they do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. The last area of a good quarterly review is spending an hour or so talking about your competition, talking about potential partnerships, and also talking about related companies that are for sale into your industry. And again, this is something that's very seldom done in any type of quarterly review, perhaps never done in an operation, but it's really important. It can have a tremendous value to your operation. And it's really important that you operate in the environment that you're competing against. And so that also adds a tremendous amount of value to these quarterly meetings.
Well, I think to kind of put a bow around that, as you and I know from our own experience, and Ron, you may have had the same thing. I mean, if you can work collaboratively with people who are in the same space, in which you realize your impact on the marketplace is going to be a lot more effective working together, either with another competitor or the government or whatever, you miss these opportunities, you know. And as we've talked a little bit earlier, you know, if you partner with the state on employment training panel resources, it can improve the caliber of your incumbent workers and create more value for you.
Yes, it does. So that is kind of a summary of forecasts and reevaluate quarterly. And as we went through the various bullet points, we pretty much came to the conclusion that a lot of these aren't being done on an annual basis, let alone a quarterly basis. They don't, a lot of times ownership doesn't trust the managers to be involved. They treat it as all confidential, so they can't get the power of their management team behind whatever they're trying to do. They don't utilize outside consultants that are impartial and objective and don't have a dog in the race that can bring up opportunities that they're not aware of and help them solve problems within the organization. So when you think about it, this one here has a lot of potential, and it's probably something every small company should be doing in some manner. Some, if you're very, very small, maybe it's a couple-hour meeting every quarter. But if you're a bigger meeting, maybe it's a couple days. But it does make a difference on keeping everybody on the same page for optimizing the value of the company in question.
Well, thank you, Ed. And I think to kind of wrap this up, what I'd like to suggest is next week, we're going to be talking about how you can create a communication system that permits you to review these things on a regular, consistent basis. So when you get to the quarterly review, you'll be able to look at it and substantially decide what adjustments have to be made, you know, how you're doing against all your numbers, but more importantly, make changes that may reflect new things in the marketplace, like COVID that we just saw. So again, I want to thank both of you. Ed, good job. Ron, as usual, you always have valuable insights. So with that, I wanted to say goodbye to everybody and thank you for attending, and we look forward to talking to you again next week.